Good morning, and welcome to the Alliance Against Violence and Adversity AVA webinar series on Webinar Wednesdays. I'm your host, Jason Novick, AVA webinar coordinator with Dr. Letourneau's Child Studies team at the University of Calgary. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this webinar. I just have a couple of announcements before we begin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will subsequently be posted on AVA's YouTube channel for reference, and if you'd like to share with anyone who wasn't able to attend during the live webinar today. Also, throughout the presentation, you're familiar with the Q&A function, so please feel free to pose questions to our speakers, and then I'll be sure to make time to discuss your questions towards the latter part of the webinar. Also, on a national level, we encourage all Canadians and visitors to Canada to learn about the Indigenous peoples of the lands on which they live, work, and visit, and to become engaged allies together. So we as Canadians, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, respect the self-determination of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and their rights and responsibilities in cultures, languages, and the pursuit of wellness. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to both speakers. First, Dr. Ranjan Datta is a Canada Research Chair in Community Disaster Research and Associate Professor of Indigenous Studies at Mount Royal University in Calgary. As an interdisciplinary community-based scholar, his work focuses on Indigenous land-based science, anti-racist climate justice, community-led disaster research, and decolonizing methodologies. He has secured over $15 million in competitive research funding and has advised governments, UN agencies, and international research networks. Dr. Datta has published extensively across books and high-impact journals and also collaborates with Indigenous, racialized, and Global South communities to advance relational, justice-oriented, and action-based research practices. Dr. Kevin Lewis is a Nehiyaw Plains Cree instructor, land-based researcher, and writer. Dr. Lewis has worked with higher learning institutions within the prairie provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta in the areas of Cree language development and instructional methodologies. His research interests include language and policy development, second language teaching methodologies, teacher education programming, and environmental education. For the past 15 years, Dr. Lewis has been working with community schools in promoting land and language-based education and is the founder of wâsakâyâsiw Culture Camps, a nonprofit organization focused on holistic well-being and co-developer of a land-based Cree immersion school. Dr. Lewis is from the Minnetsikiwan Lake Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory. In terms of their important presentation, this webinar will explore the meanings of responsibilities in environmental research from cross-cultural and Indigenous community perspectives. Drawing on case studies from rural and northern Indigenous communities in Canada, including energy disaster and land rights struggles, the presentation examines how settler colonialism, miscommunication, and exclusion of Indigenous self-government shape environmental research practices. Grounded in relational theoretical frameworks and participatory action research, this presentation will highlight storytelling, land-based learning, and deep listening as decolonizing methodologies. This webinar will call for redefining research as community capacity building, honoring non-human relations, Indigenous knowledge systems, and collective responsibilities towards land, people, and future generations. Dr. Datta and Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will now turn over the presentation to both of you.
All right, I guess thank you. Dr. Datta, you want me to go first, you had said?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
please go ahead, please. I
Yes.
can stop sharing and you can share your presentation.
Okay. I'll see if I can figure this out, and then if not, if we're having trouble, then I'll just let's see. How does that look on my end?
This looks
Excellent.
great.
Is good?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, good. So kind of, I guess first off, no tinanas ko mo yana no kutagi sa ka mamigo ga ksiwat set go apahtu si suma kapatita o hai tiga stipa itsagansa mina waguhtun kamiupik squatami. Iwa nihio no nihio atsun kanio skamkag kaki mamiupai gutiu tsini nawe magi kuksnuhtego tinigan. So I guess that's the Cree language that I speak. That's my first language. That's the language that we use at Ganyasik culture camps. And then what I wanted to do was this institution, we kind of developed a research arm, and then we called it Ganyasik Research and Development Institute. And then being that we never really had a safe space to actually talk about our ways of knowing, our ways of being, and our ways of doing, right? So these are there's spaces in the schools, there's spaces, in our ceremonies, there's spaces within our, in some of our homes, but it's not really it hasn't created a really a safe place to be who we are, right? And to practice our ways, to talk about our sciences, to talk about our engineering, to talk about our the chemistry, the medicines, and everything that our connection has to our lake. We're in the boreal forest, and then you can also you can look us up online, and then this is us reaching out into using, I guess, technology, using YouTube, using whatever's out there to, to make sure that we want to create a safe place for research to happen. But then also, I guess what the intro, I just really want to thank Alliance Against Violence and Adversity for having a webinar like this, because we know the space that you need to create, the accountability that we have, and in my Cree intro there, to our ancestors, the ones that come, before us, and then sort of like that guide us in this ethical space now, and then for possibly doing better in the future. And then again, when we're talking about accountability, right away, what we're doing, and this is kind of like the relationship that we've developed with Dr. Datta when he had come into our community. He started sharing sort of like his lens and from his perspective, but then also started developing trust, a face that they can recognize, somebody that they can just talk to, and then really grassroots level, right? So these are things that like just suggesting future researchers that are going into our communities to do that work. And so here are the differences here, right? Sometimes these grants, I know they have time limits, and they have got like, we've got to do reporting and so on. And then of course, everything's got to be published and written and documented. But there's a difference in the communities where Wagutun is a very complicated term, and then it's kind of like the kinship to everything from the fish or the nutrients that we need that are given to us by the lake or the forest or our gardens or superstore or whatever grocery store is nearby. And then the other, it's further, Wagutun is the air. We give thanks to the air. We give thanks to, and we say, and there's a kinship. It's not just just don't say, oh yeah, we give thanks to the air. No, it's a grandfather. It's somebody that looks after us. And then for us to actually even be talking like this, to be visiting, to be sharing, to be singing, to be praying, to share space. Another one would be, I addressed the lake earlier, but the water, right? We need water. We don't live very long without water, right? So there's those spirits of water, those spirits within that water, that give us nourishment for us to, to walk this earth walk. the ceremony that reminds us and the governance that's in there. It's like if we start polluting our water that's supposed to sustain us, then we're not going to be very healthy. We're not going to have that long earth walk. We're not going to be able to have what we call in Cree white hair. We're not going to be able to see our grandchildren because, maybe ailments or whatever. But the governance is in there. So how do we keep the boreal forest, in an area where it's sustainable? It's sustaining us. It's sustaining the medicines, the berries, the animals, the birds, that come there. So it's sort of like that multi-generational accountability, right? So that's I know people really like the timelines, but yes, there is timelines. There should be things that are done, and people want it really fast, in this time and age. But really, it's kind of like when you come into the communities, you're doing kind of like a long life commitment. Be aware of that when you are going to have impactful research. Again, fiscal timelines, I understand that. Consultation and consent. So we have to figure that out, and you've got to massage the words and the understanding, and then of course the language, um, the storytelling that happens. So when people in the communities, in our communities, we're going through a lot of healing right now. You're gonna hear that type of language. So if you're depending on the type of research that you are going to go do into the communities, understand that there's a lot of trauma that are in there, and systematic trauma, intergenerational trauma, and so on. So mental health, physical health, spiritual health, all these different um, these detriments, I guess, is social detriments. You're going to see them. And I'm just apologize. I just wanted to give enough time for Dr. Data as well. But also, when we're excluding sort of like the right way of doing things, I'm not gonna, and I'm very careful at this. That's why at the beginning I said Ganyasik Culture Camp's perspective, because if you go into the next community next door, things might be totally different. If you go north of us to Dene territory, so the next door, yes, they're family members, we're probably related and so on. But a little further north, you'll have the Dene, or you'll have Blackfoot territory, or in the Tsuut'ina Nation, in these different nations, they're gonna do things differently. So be careful on painting, all indigenous nations with one brush. We're all very diverse. We have different linguistic languages, dialects, tones, all these differences. And then when the language is being used, that's our connection to what we referred to as wagotun earlier on. So if you include elders, if you include the youth in there, try to keep them engaged. Ceremonies are not, they're not like, you've got to be like in our area, you have to be Cree to go into a ceremony. They're not like that. They're meant for human beings, right? So they're all open, but understand there's a protocols in there where you can't video or take pictures or things like that. You're present. That's what they're meant for. So that's the beauty of our ceremonies, that we still keep them live. And then because of the usage of old knowledge governing us today, that ethical. There was one, Dr. Leona Makokis, um, moral compass, ethical compass, that's where we get it from. That's that space. And if you want to have stories from the elders, if you want to have stories or knowledge or interviews even from knowledge keepers, that time is very important. It's so foundational. Uh, so the old way of doing things was going in and then out, right? But here's the new normal that we're doing now, and then I want to reach out and I want to express how important this is. I'm very in this university space that I've entered. I'm very alone. There's very few indigenous scholars or professors, right, all across Canada. And then the question is like, why is that, right? My question is now I'm inside these institutions, and my question is like, how come there's not that many other colleagues that I can, co-research with or collaborate with or co-write? So here's the beautiful thing with Dr. Data is when you walk the talk, he's come in and he's mentored myself, and then I've seen him mentor others like doctorate students, doctoral students, PhD graduate students, of all different levels, and I've seen him walk and show sort of like the space that we've created at Kanyasa Culture Camps. So you see that deep listening. You see sort of like the organic talking circles that have happened, that I've seen, and I talk about it all the time because it's so beautiful to see that. But then that's where you get these stories, these gems, right? And I wish we had more time, of course, to talk about this, but you'll see buzzwords like land-based education. You'll see other different ways of, what are the climate events that have happened in the past, and how have we captured those climate events, right? Climate change events. So we have those. We have those in those ceremonies, and there's like 10 that we still have back home, and they're all throughout the year. And if this is news to anybody, it's like, why is it news? Why has it been hidden? Why has it been not shared? How come this is things that are, the first time you're hearing about these different ceremonies? Like there's a horse dance ceremony, ghost dance ceremony, and these are English translations, but there's sweats, there's a sun dance, there's uh pipe lodge, there's a giveaway lodge, there's a whole bunch of them. But it's that's where you get all this information is within the communities. We're very lucky to have our language in our ceremonies, but we're also very lucky that we've had people that have walked with us, through this process of developing a safe place to develop our languages, to keep our languages going, but also to understand the protocols that go within studying or working with us, right? Another thing too is you understand, like I said earlier, we have water beings, we have water spirits, we have the spirit of wind, we have the spirit of the sun is a grandfather. We have grandmothers that are out there, right? We have all these different that are considered non-human, but they're a part of sort of like the governance of, it doesn't matter if it's 2026, they're still here. They still help us understand, what's not good for the future and how we should be moving and walking. Long-term models, we need to start implementing those because environment, right? The environmental policies, the environmental changes that are happening. How do we slow those down? How do we speed up those governance models? And I'm very happy that we are in Canada right now because otherwise, like, it took a long time for even like for me to be talking about our ceremonies to open up in my language, right? These places were not youth centered. They were not ceremonially safe, right? I've had um, the governance of the universities stopped me when I wanted to have a pipe ceremony, right? So those are things that have happened not too long ago, right? But we're working through better ways of doing those things based on those old original laws of these territories. So when people are saying oh, I'm talking from and live on traditional Blackfoot territory or the Cree territory or the Métis, homelands of the Métis. Um, what's the action behind that, right? So there's a thing to verbalize it, and that's the start of everything, but then also the action that follows that. So this is what I see here. And then in closing, I feel that I want to give, I guess, the invite, July, last week of July, we're having another water gathering, and then please, I guess, look us up and then see if you can even contact us. But I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Ranjan Datta. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. You have more time if you want to go ahead and talk about your camp on July 27 to August 1st.
Sure. Yeah. I can do that for sure. So this is going to be the seventh gathering. And then for those people that know, number seven is kind of like sacred number. So this one's going to be a really special one, we feel. And it started out with actually monitoring and seeing and checking up on like how is the lake health? And then also listening to the women. The women were the ones that said, we're water beings, we're people. And then I was like, what are you talking about? So it was an engagement from the women. And then we started talking to the medicine people in our community. And then they started sharing, okay, this is what you look for. We engaged with the hunters, we engaged with the medicine pickers, the berry pickers, the harvesters. And then another time we engaged with strictly just the elders, and then we threw in the research part of it, and then sort of opened up that space of allowing uh, other relatives to come in and then have those organically developed talking circles or one-on-ones, and you just see it pop up all over the place. And then it's actually started when the first time we had it, there was one-on-ones, because you actually do sit with elders that are lodge keepers. Their first languages are going to be Cree. We're so close to the Dene people that there are going to be Dene speakers there. We've had Anishinaabe speakers. We've had talk speakers that would talk about like Wolford Buck was there with a planetarium one time. But it's really looking at our knowledge systems and then really centering it on sort of what should we be keeping, that'll guide us for a better future, right? Conservation was a really big one in all of those gatherings. So I just wanted to just tell you that yeah, we do have a space. It's at on the north side of Minnesota Lake, and then the nation that I come from is Minnesota Lake Cree Nation, and then that's where we developed this research arm or the space where we can actually just kind of be us. We didn't have to look around and ask, is it all right to smudge? Is it all right to have a ceremony? Is it all right to, do all these things? And then all of a sudden, the different types of researchers, scientists, social scientists, everybody has come there. So just wanted to acknowledge that I understand what the Alliance Against Violence and Adversity, like this space, because we fight for this space as well, to be heard, to be recognized, to be respected.
Thank you, Kevin. I had an opportunity to be in this camp last 4 years. This camp is very important for this particular webinar, because this webinar talking how the indigenous, non-indigenous people work together as a community to solving the problem. And Kevin was my mentor for a long time. Yesterday, I was talking Professor Dr. Mal Billard. She is the founder of 3IC. She is also in the call. I was explaining how, Kevin, you created this claim to inviting everyone so that everyone can come together and solve the problem to understanding how indigenous science is so critical for understanding health, understanding water, understanding the soil. So you created the opportunity to through leadership of various indigenous elder knowledge keepers and non-indigenous scholars and students. So it is a great opportunity to see how we can make a bedding between indigenous science, Western science, and our through our relationship that Dr. Malvila in 3I saying she was referring. So it's a great opportunity that yesterday I was talking with Dr. Malbilad, and we are planning to go this year as well. So we are looking forward for that camp, and I highly suggest people, those who would like to go, please take this opportunity. So as you can see, Dr. Kevin Lewis have been my mentor for, as you can see, I'm the settler of color. I grew up, born and raised as a land-based minority in back home in Bangladesh. And when I'm saying land-based minority, there are only 3 to 4%, and 94% are majority. That means not land-based people. They don't understand it. So once we practice land-based knowledge from our community in our school, we didn't get the opportunity to learn. So always we were told not to speak our land-based language because it will be scientifically biased. And I had the opportunity to live in TD6 territory 10 years, currently TD7 territory 6 years. So I'm very grateful with all indigenous people, particularly my relative Kevin Lewis and other friends who gave the opportunity to learn and building relationship. Afterwards, I worked in various indigenous and land-based communities in Bangladesh. So I would like to give a very short glimpse. What does actually responsibility mean as a settler of color? Why it is important to settler of color to create to take the responsibility to learn indigenous perspective. As you know, I have been working last 20 years with various indigenous community in Global South and Global North. So from the community perspective, the current research is problematic because according to the community, we don't understand the meaning of research from the community perspective because community have been using the meaning of research for thousands of years. And they have been using the concept of development, concept of, as Dr. Kevin Lewis said, conservation. It's a different meaning. But what happened in colonial structure, indigenous people, land-based people, they became tool to maintain the colonial structure. That's why Maori indigenous scholar Dr. Linda Smith, she said, research became mosquito, suck your blood and live. And the indigenous community from our country, they said it's a foreign bird. They take the knowledge and afterwards they call it discovery. And knowledge always belong to the community and land. That's why we have many misconceptions. And many people, they use, as Dr. Kevin Lewis said, buzzword, decolonization, community-based research, or reconciliation. Because the reason is buzzword, because when they use decolonization with other people, but they don't decolonize themselves. That's why it's very important to understand what does the decolonization mean. And many researchers, policymaker industry, they fail to understand this, why self-governance is important to understanding environmental research. Another perspective came up during our my learning time is a lack of collaboration. The many researchers, they talk with one elder or two elder, then they check the box. But whereas knowledge varies, as Kevin said, land to land, community to community, generation to generation, elder to elder, and knowledge keeper to knowledge keeper. So many researchers, they fail to understand the lack of understand the importance of collaborative approach. And settler colonialism is not past; it's ongoing through our education system, through our understanding, through the way we are doing. So how I understand the meaning of the responsibility. My responsibility is guiding with relational accountability, accountability. That means what we are learning, we have to be responsible to this learning, to the land, to the people. Another perspective is epistemological pluralism. That means understanding the multiple ways as knowledge varies according to community and knowledge to knowledge. Now I would like to share, as many of you know, that twice saying, that is Western knowledge and indigenous knowledge, but twice saying, from my perspective, it doesn't go together until we understand our responsibility. That's why three I saying comes. Dr. Mal Billard, she is the founder of the three I saying. As Dr. Mal Billard is also here, I thought maybe I can share what does the three I seeing with her permission. So in her, Dr. Mal Billard, as you can see, she created in 2022 the how three I seeing indigenous research, Western research, and our responsibility, our relationship with land, water, air, and everything, so that we can bring our relationship, our responsibility. But if you would like to know more about it, please go to Dr. Mal Billard webpage or ask her. She will give you more information. So I have been doing it, this understanding my responsibility last 17 years of my research journey, using community engaged research, decolonizing research, and relational theoretical framework. Now in my research, indigenous elder knowledge keeper, they are the scientists, and their knowledge is scientific knowledge. They don't need validation from the Western science. Because if you look at the history of the world, it's more than colonial time only. If you exclude just 400 years or maximum 2000 years, if you think about from Alexander time, you can see the millions of years the traditional knowledge as a scientific knowledge has been sustainable for millions of years. So that's why the colonization only 400 years is the problematic. That's why you can see how indigenous people, land-based people, they kept their land, their life, everything sustainable. And what makes the problem, the current ways of understanding science is a colonial, is a profit maximization. That's why in my research, I consider elder knowledge keeper as a scientist for the community. They are not claiming that they are scientists for all over the world, but they know what is best for their family, best for their community, best for their young generation. That's why in my research, I consider elder knowledge keeper, for example, Kevin Lewis, and their relative, his mom, and his relative, they know what is best for their land. They are knowledgeable on their on their community. They know which plant is medicine plant. As a settler of color, I had many opportunity to learn. And deep listening is another significant that Kevin mentioned, because when elder talk, we as a researcher, we have a responsibility to learn and respect and incorporate in this learning to our research journey. So I just would like to give you some kind of some of the overview. What does the responsibility mean in environmental research? So responsibility or decolonization doesn't stand until we understand the land back or indigenous land rights. So indigenous ways of understanding land back means they kept the land sustainable for thousands of years, millions of years actually. So that's why land back is not that I'm giving my land to you and you can do whatever you whatever way you want to use it. Land based is means our obligation to the land. We shouldn't own the land. Second perspective I have learned when we are talking about responsibility, we need to decolonize our ways of knowing. That current ways of knowing is not working, and we have to decolonize ways of knowing and doing. And since indigenous land-based perspective has been sustainable for thousands of years, we need to have a responsibility to learn, respect, and honor indigenous ways of doing and knowing, as is already scientific. And according to TRC call for 94 for call for action, it gave us the opportunity to create meaningful bridge between indigenous knowledge, Western knowledge. As a non-indigenous scholar, I think I have a responsibility to learn those calls and incorporate in my learning. Another perspective that I have learned, indigenous people, our community, land-based community from Global South and Global North, they never deny Western knowledge. The problem is actually the indigenous people became tools for maintaining the colonial structure, as I explained previously. So we have a responsibility to create meaningful bridge to centering indigenous knowledge, indigenous science to solving the problem. Whenever we are talking about land and water, we shouldn't forget language is significant part of it. Culture is significant part of it. So that's why understanding is from holistic perspective is very important issues when we're talking about creating a responsibility. I know I don't have time, but I would like to give very short example from my research. Sorry, it's coming again. Just short glimpse that what does it mean. I don't know why it is coming again. Just a second. So as you can see in this example, my home country, Bangladesh, back home. At the bottom part, as you can see, is a first photo, is a indigenous maintain the forest, and diversity was 97% over there. And this forest is not only for human, is for everyone. On the top of that, you can see the government is saying that the bottom part of the forest is not profitable, it's not sustainable because it's not giving money to the outsider. So they are clear cutting the forest and putting the lumber plantation. In 2002, when I was there, if you just dig only 4 or 5 feet, you can get the drinking water. Now you have to dig 450 feet for the getting the drinking water. And indigenous people, they don't have money for it. And this is the one sample of the mountain. There are hundreds of mountains occupied by the outsider for making profit maximization. And this, as you can see, this forest is not only profit, they are displacing indigenous people, displacing all the culture and language. That's why indigenous people, they say current ways of management, forest management is nothing but exploitation. So indigenous people, they want their own conservation. They want in our one of the learning we learned from the from Thailand, and Dr. Malbilad was with me. Indigenous women, they're showcasing how they can protect their forest through women leadership, through indigenous science to protecting their land and knowledge. Indigenous women, they have been creating the forest management as a model for, I would say, in Thailand and all over the world, how they can be caretaker of the forest and the environment. This is our recent visit. Dr. Malbilad was with me as well in Nepal, and women showcasing their land-based science and how their land-based science is becoming danger because of the climate crisis. And this is the, as you can see, Global South, how land-based science is important, understanding, observing science. I don't have time. I'm just skipping some of the PowerPoint. This is another example from Woodland Key First Nation community that how their forest becoming very vulnerable because of the Western forest management. And indigenous people, they don't have right to manage their land. So they also created open space for our learning. And this is the cabin camp that gave us the opportunity to learn from the various indigenous elder knowledge keeper. And right side photo, you can see that the medicinal person, they are talking about important of the medicine plan and how this is very important for current crisis, as you can see from COVID and other time, even food sovereignty. Why, as a non-indigenous scholar, need to learn about all these indigenous plant, native, and how to protect it. So this is another example. I'm not going because we don't have enough time. So the problem of the forest diversity, according to Woodland Cree First Nation community, when we are talking about disaster, we cannot discuss without talking about impact of the residential school. What residential school they did, they separated community from the land-based learning, land-based science understanding through residential school, Indian act, and colonial understanding of the spirituality. That's why the invasive species increased. They killed the buffalo and introducing colonial forest management. So that's why when we are talking about responsibility, for me as a settler of color, I think we need to ask ourselves who we are, where we come from. It's not that I'm coming from Bangladesh, I came from the inland. It's which worldview we are coming from, what we are doing, how, which land we are standing on, who own the land. In fact, nobody own the land. We should have responsibility to the land instead of asking who own the land. And what does the decolonization mean personally for me, and how my land-based learning can enrich me, my community, and we can be build a solidarity to solve the problem, because protecting land and water is not only indigenous people responsibility, it's all of our responsibility. That's why we all need to take the responsibility. And how we can do it, to understanding the meanings of land, understanding TRC call for action, understanding indigenous science. Indigenous knowledge is a science, and it doesn't need validation from the Western science. Again, I am saying it. And we should be creating solidarity to protecting indigenous land, language, culture, because as a settler of color, to learning those responsibilities create my belongingness with the land. It create my self-determination with the land that I'm living. And last but not least important, how we can transform our research into action from the responsibility perspective. First is bridging our community knowledge through with our worldviews, so that community can see the benefit what we are doing. And they can use us to solving the problem instead of we are using them to gaining the only academic benefit. Another perspective, understanding, as Kevin said, how knowledge varies according to community to community, generation to generation, and land to land. Understanding multiple ways of knowing how the community solve differently. So we can find the similarity instead of comparing them. Because once we compare, we are actually blaming the victim. Another perspective is we need to spend time with the community, not just going there and not showcasing, so that we can spend time, community know who we are and what we are doing. They can guide us to build the relationship, and they can use us. At the same time, we would be able to know what community wants from us. Engaging the community from the very beginning, so that community, they can guide us what kind of research objective they want us to learn and how to do it. And also think about how we can use our community practice as a community capacity building, understanding community needs from the very beginning to end. Last but not least important, always we need to think about how we can transform our research into action, so that our research can be beneficial for the community. At the same time, it can be a transformational journey for all of us. So I would like to now end here and going for the question. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity, and Kevin giving us for me as a settler of color to learn about the importance of the land-based culture and land-based science.
Thank you so much, Dr. Datta and Dr. Lewis, for your effective and informative presentation for the EVA webinar audience. And I'm very appreciative of the time and effort that you have invested into this presentation. As a reminder to everyone in attendance, please feel free to post your questions within the Q&A function of the Zoom webinar platform. And I have a couple of questions for both of you before audience questions will be posted. And specifically, one question that I have relates to storytelling and methodology, and specifically how I found the section of your presentation on storytelling and land-based education to be very informative. And I'm wondering, from both your perspectives, what is it about these methods that a standard data-driven approach might miss, and why is this storytelling and land-based education methodology so vital for decolonization?
Maybe I can answer that. This is something that we're actually right now we're working on it on so many different levels. So there's these we have these horses called the Bronzen Lake horses. And then they're specifically genetically from the boreal forest. And then we have this ceremony in our community, and where we dance actually with an actual horse, and then there's a feast involved, there's prayer involved, and then what we're doing is we're accounting our relationship with this horse, and then how it's been there for us, through tough times, winter times, summer times when needed, and so on, right? And then, but in grade 5 in Saskatoon, I was told, horses, they weren't here in North America. There was no such thing as horses. But then in our field, in the universities, you go down to the archaeological building, and then you'll see like 4 different types of horses that are there prehistoric, and they're all built, with the bones, and then all the way to the modern day horse, and then exactly where they were excavated or found, in these sites. And then there's another one too on the south, just south of us, where Minnesota is, just on the Alberta side, Bodo, Alberta. It's an archaeological site. And then here's the beauty of sort of like where two worlds meet. We always said, like, we've always had this horse, we even addressed it as the big dog, but it has knowledge of the forest. It has a home in the boreal forest. So they bring with them a different knowledge. So in this story, we actually have like half relatives, we'll say, because these stories go like that far back, where one of the chief horses became married to one of our relatives, and then in turn they're part of this water. They're half water beings, and then half horse, half human, if you want, but they represent water, and then they're seen. So here's the governance part of it: is they're seen on this we're called the place of the little islands, and on this one of these islands they graze these, and they had twins, this couple, you know they had twins, and then but the only ones that get to see them, if you ever get to see them, are the ones that walk a good path, if they live a good life, if they're truthful, if they're trusted, and so on. Those are the ones that might get a chance to see these two horses. So it's a way to govern our little ones, but then also, to have that conservation in there, where if we're related to them, should we be polluting this lake, or should we be respecting them? Would you do that with your mom? Would you do that with your sister? Would you do that with your auntie? Grandmother, and so on. So the kinship part of it is that responsibility and connection. So it's just and of course, there's songs that are associated with it, and I just named the Horse Dance Lodge that we relive and reaccount this relationship. So yeah, that's just like a short example of it, but due to the time, I think Dr. Dada had a hand up.
Oh, it was a mistake. But I want to share with my mom what my mom used to tell me the story. So she used to create her own clothes. She teach me how to grow our own food. She used to tell me how to catch fishes. So all these stories has a statistics, but we have to understand what is the statistics mean. Statistics is not bad, but if we use the statistics to control the people, that's what science is doing now, then it become problematic. But understanding a statistic, the solving problem, or creating self-determination, or understanding how to create our own community issue with the statistic, understanding through stories, has a different meaning. So what problem that I have been facing last, even my own training, education, when we are talking about statistics or the science, so-called science, we are not allowed to use our empathy on it, our responsibility on it. They call it biasness. Actually, it's controlling the science. You can see the great example during the COVID time. We People got lots of solution, but they don't want to share with one from others because it's a profit. On the other hand, when I went to the cabin place or other indigenous during that time, elder, they want us to go to the land. They want us to understand which plant is important so that everyone can have the opportunity to know and solve the problem. You can see how the understanding of colonization, understanding of scientific method is used for the controlling the power. That's why it's very dangerous, and not only dangerous, it's incomplete because it's for used for certain group of people for only profit maximization. That's why we need to understand differently the meaning of science, meaning of statistics from the indigenous or land-based science.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for both of your important and valuable insights regarding the importance of storytelling and land-based education as an informative methodology, and for sharing both of your valuable insights in this regard. And my second and final question relates to capacity building and extraction, and specifically, how would you recommend, in accordance with your presentation, that the script shifts to building community capacity? And what does this look like? How does your current research help inform the building of community capacity?
Did you want me to go first again?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. Yeah, just a quick answer to that one. Like we have and I say this with respect, you know. So some of the buzzwords that I remember that were out there when we were writing proposals, right? What does a proposal cost? What does an idea cost, right? And then let's do the research, and then what are there any other case studies that are out there? So this is the capacity that's building in our community. I'm the only one with the, you know, with the credentials that I've gone to, but hopefully, you know, we're going to create that understanding that, you know, policy is there to help us do things better. And then hopefully that policy lasts and it doesn't sit on the shelf. So here's the thing. Dr. Datta showed two slides there from the community, and then you had food security, but food sovereignty. That was kind of like the theme of that time from that gathering. But here's something that you kind of like, depending on the circle, I would say most people would say this is a food desert, right? Because there's no grocery store nearby. The closest town to get food would be Cold Lake or Loon Lake, you know, and that's your junk food, right? But you don't want to say it's a food desert, you know, because if you say that to the elder that's been living there all his life is like, what the heck do you mean food desert? You got fresh fish right there. We got moose, we got berries, we got medicines. We have this can sustain us. And then, by the way, we've had gardens that sustained us. We were really known for our gardens because the soil is really rich and we can grow. The temperature is just really nice. But the what we found was the growing time in that area is really short, right? Because we're just far enough north, but we're in a boreal forest that if you plant it right and use the sun to your advantage, we're by the lake. So everything's kind of, you know, but it's learned. You don't just wake up with this knowledge, you know, you don't wake up like, oh yeah, I know everything Cree. You actually have to spend time with those knowledge keepers and those elders, right? to learn those little tricks. Where are the whitefish right now in the wintertime? Where are the pickerel where are they hanging out in the springtime when when we need to restock our food cache, so those type of things. And you get those stories from the people that went fishing, the hunters, the ones that harvested in that sustainable way. So I'll hand it over.
Whatever Kevin says, this is also my perspective. Just I would like to share one quote. I know we don't have time. I had opportunity to meet with one of the Dane First Nation elder in Fond du Lac. He was 97 years old. He said,
Wow.
I'm 97 years old. I will be dying soon, but I have lots of stories, sustainable stories from the land. I know how to survive in this land. I have a scientific method that I have been using throughout my life. You have responsibility to learn these stories and share with our young generation and your young generation so that they can understand it. So that is the responsibility mean that we have responsibility to learn and understand and use in our research, knowing that we all have a responsibility to learn, not destructing. We always need to go to the community elder knowledge keeper and Kevin's as he explained.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing both of your important perspectives on the importance of community capacity building and also knowledge attainment through learning these stories and listening to those within the community. For example, elderly individuals and within communities, as Dr. Lewis had exemplified. So I really appreciate both of your valuable perspectives and also talking about lived experience too in this regard. So I don't see any questions within the Q&A function. So I would like to thank both of you again for your valuable presentation, which has, of course, been very informative for the AVA webinar audience and for sharing both of your valuable expertise and also the lived experience. And this will be a valuable addition to the AVA webinar Wednesday series. So I just have a couple of quick notes that, as you're all aware, that this webinar has been recorded, so it will be posted soon on AVA's YouTube channel for reference in the future. And then also I will be sending later today a feedback survey to everyone who attended the webinar. So if you could please complete this. And thank you so much, Dr. Datta and Dr. Lewis, for your excellent presentation.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Kevin, for joining. I know how busy you are.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for both of your time.